Hi, it's Alice here. Right stuff pollinator plants for fall. When I started my pollinator garden almost 2 years ago, I had a primary goal, and that was I wanted native plants with flowers that would bloom over 3 seasons. I wanted these native plant flowers to provide nectar and pollen for the pollinators that would be busy during the last season of the year. So the fall season is here now. Let's see how well my plant selection matches up with the specs or the plant characteristics of the plants that I chose to plant. Did I look at the sun? That was the first criteria, was sun. I have full sun mostly and some areas of afternoon shade. Second criteria is soil. I have sandy soil and the pH is 6.2, so it's slightly acidic. Are my plants growing in the appropriate soil pH so they can absorb the maximum amount of nutrients that they need to grow and thrive? Criteria number 3, water. I wanted plants that wouldn't require a heavy watering schedule. I tried to get plants that were somewhat on the dry side or at least moderate to dry. Number 4 criteria, bloom time. Since I wanted plants that would bloom in the spring, summer, and fall, and it's now fall, do I have plants that are able to support the pollinator activity in the fall? Number 5 criteria, color. I've learned the preferred colors for butterflies are red, pink, yellow, orange, blue, and purple. Bees also prefer some of those colors. Do I have enough variety of colors in the flowers that are blooming now in this season, fall? And finally, flower structure was my 6th criteria. Flower structure is important because some butterflies have a short proboscis and some they're long-tongued. It's the same with bees. Some are shorter and some are longer tongued. I wanted some short tubular flowers and some longer tubular flowers to cover the different proboscis lengths. And I wanted some plants that were also open-faced so that those butterflies that preferred a landing pad could settle easily on the open-faced plant flowers and nectar. So how did I do? Let's take a look. Let's walk around the pollinator gardens and see what's blooming now and what has the potential to continue to bloom throughout the fall season. Let's see how the pollinator plants are doing. Here is the first half of my front pollinator garden. Blanket flowers are blooming, mostly gone to seed, but there's still a little bloom. And there are other blanket flower plants that are growing up. Those may bloom in another month. There's a pollinator hard at work on the dotted horse mint. It's another native pollinator plant, big attractor this time of year. And we can see the bee working the plant. Common name is tropical sage. Long blooming seasons. It looks like the liatris already bloomed. Going to the next side of the pollinator garden, the sunflowers. These are the oxeye sunflowers. They do have narrow leaves, and I had called them narrow leaf, but they are actually the oxeye sunflowers. Black-eyed Susans are blooming. Elephant's foot blooming. They have tiny lavender blooms, and it will attract pollinators. Blue curls. This plant will bloom in another month or so. The tropical sage, native salvia blooming, so pollinators have a source of nectar there. Stokes asters have finished their blooms. The blooms have now gone to seed, so there are no Stokes asters available for the fall. Coreopsis, and the plants are thriving but no blooms. Recent addition to my pollinator garden is powder puff mimosa, sometimes called sunshine mimosa. I should have a spread of this plant over this entire front area of the yard. They'll come way out here, and we'll have pink puffs off and on until late fall. Walking to the circle garden, which is another pollinator garden, our approach, and this is the love grass. And moving into the circle garden, the beard's tongue bloomed late summer. The purple coneflower, also called echinacea, and it's looking beautiful. There are more blooms ready to come, buds. So this plant is going to be available for the pollinators this fall. Starry rosinweed has bloomed, has buds, has seed pods that are ready to fall. It is a perennial, but it does reseed and spread. As we walk around the corner, the purple passion flower, the larger one, also called maypop, it's getting established. It's already had a bloom, and there are more buds. There'll be more blooms coming and available for pollinators. Walk across the other side, a bigger bunch of starry rosinweed and firebush, already sulfur butterfly on the bush. There's a second one that just arrived. It's blooming and will continue to bloom until frost. Coral honeysuckle behind it has blooms. Both of these plants are tubular, so they are suitable for longer-tongued butterflies and hummingbirds. Most of the hummingbirds have migrated, but for those still around, this is a source of nectar. I planted tubular flowers structure and then open face for those butterflies that prefer a landing pad where they can put their feet down and taste the plant. The coneflower would be considered an open face structure. Walking over to a small pollinator garden, which has been sort of an experimental garden for me. The Georgia calumet has a lot of dieback and just a couple of little blooms. It should be blooming, but it looks like this plant may either die back and need to be replaced or cut back and hopefully grow back. Next to it is one of the false rosemaries. This one's called Contradina canescens, and its bloom is starting. So it will have blooms in the autumn. Again, the red salvia, tropical sage blooming, and the solidago or goldenrod is blooming, and pollinator just showed up. This is a large, open, sprawling habit and full of blooms or blooms to be opened, and there are pollinators on it. The last stop is to check out my Walters viburnum Mrs. Schiller's in the front. It was part of my pollinator garden plantings. I spread my pollinators around. So there are many locations for the pollinators to go to. This one is blooming, so it is a source of nectar, and there are berries that are developing. Here is a cluster of 2 red berries that are going to ripen and a bunch of blackberries that have ripened and are available for the birds. So after my walk around and reviewing everything, I want to check the criteria that I had in the beginning with what plants I have in the ground and how they're growing. The first 3 criteria were sun, soil, and water. All the plants that I've chosen thrive in full sun and also some afternoon shade, so that's not a problem. The soil is appropriate. They're thriving and they're growing, so I assume that they are getting the right nutrients from the soil. And the water needs are as I anticipated. I wanted moderate to dry, and I am not doing a lot of watering except when we've had extreme periods of drought. And by that, we have had several weeks of very high temperatures and no rain. And so I've watered once a week. One time I watered twice in one week. That to me is moderate and not excessive watering. My focus has been on what's blooming, so the bloom time of the selections that I have, and are there enough of them? Do I have a balance of the 6 colors: red, orange, pink, yellow, blue, and violet? I can answer the colors right off the bat. Yes, I have a variety of those colors that are actually blooming into the fall. My planning for next year, I will review the quantities of the different colors and see if I need to add in, for example, another pink, so that I have a blend of all the colors for each of the seasons, not just the fall. In terms of flower structure, I have both the tubular and the open face. The tubular for the longer proboscis and the open face for the butterflies and the other pollinators that prefer a landing pad. I did a count of how many of each kind of structure I have, and I have twice as many open face flowers as I do tubular. That's something I'm going to think about, but at least I can check all of the boxes of my criteria that I have things blooming in the fall. I have all the colors covered, and I have both short and longer tubular flowers as well as open face flowers. I did a plant count. I have 22 native plants in the front yard, and I looked at all of them, and of those, 17 were blooming now and had the potential to continue blooming into the fall. So that's about 67%, or 2/3 of all the native plants will be carrying blooms forward to support the pollinators. I would say that's a garden yay. I did have a few gaps, perhaps replacing plants, dividing plants. The calumet is a possibility to add to my list for repurchase next year. So there are things to review, and I hope that in going through this process, you got some ideas for how you might approach building your pollinator garden and evaluating it to see where the gaps are and areas for improvement. This is a way to make you a more successful gardener. identified a road to success, that you've picked up some ideas, information, and tips along the way. Now, if I see something that needs replacing, or if I get other ideas, add it to the list for this next year and see how everything continues to develop during the fall. And then when planning time comes in the winter, I'll have data and information so that I can choose plants appropriately and be able to enhance the pollinator garden that I've started. And I hope that you have the same success with your pollinator garden. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up. If you have any experience with any of these plants or other plants in your garden, please leave a comment below. There's some more videos that you might enjoy watching next. And subscribe. Garden Yay! See you in the next video.